Three.
Hello, everyone. You are listening to the C Squared podcast with Corey and Curtis. Today, we are here with our illustrious host, Keefy from Ghost Cult Magazine. And we are going to be talking about all sorts of things journalism related. We'll probably get into some mild bitching because I'm sure he has a lot of the same things to bitch about that I do, and that's my favorite topic. But first, I do just want to say thank you for coming on the show, joining us today. We're really happy to have you here.
It's awesome to be here. Great to be here with you. Great to be reunited with Curtis, my podcast former soulmate, and laughing internally at the necrosexual picture over your shoulder, which is just unreal.
I love him so much. And I love that picture. And when I saw it, I had to have it. So for anybody who hasn't noticed, the necrosexual is right there, and he is fantastic.
He's going hard, literally.
I freaking love it. I love it. It's so classy.
So now that we've already gone off the rails right at the beginning, why don't we start with our first question, Corey?
So, Keefy, you are the owner, operator, main head honcho at Ghost Cult Magazine. How did you get started in journalism, or what made you want to get started in music journalism?
So music has been a huge part of my entire life. I played music for a long time. I was somewhat of a musical prodigy, and I went to the famous High School of Performing Arts in New York City, famous for the TV and movie Fame. Everybody kind of knows that story if you know who I am. Sang with Whitney Houston, went to high school with famous people, much more talented than I. Puttered around in bands my 20s and 30s, hardcore, thrash metal, a little bit of new metal, rap rock, death metal, hardcore. I sing, I play bass, I badly play guitar. And, I knew my dreams, my two twin dreams of teenagehood was I'm either going to be on the back of a tour bus or I'm going to be a journalist, because I always loved writing. And I had actually started my own publishing company at 18 to do a variety of publishing projects. I had some poetry published that ended up being terrible song lyrics for marginal thrash metal songs, because I was grandiose and, expressive. And so I always kind of had a thing for journalism. And you don't really get to pick what you want to write in journalism. Usually you go to a publication and you write what they tell you. And I wanted to either, if I couldn't do entertainment or sports, like every young dumbass kid, I wanted to do politics, actually. Curtis knows, and we're not going to talk about it, but I'm super interested in politics, particularly my leftist politics, but I'm going to leave it out so we don't rankle anybody's tail feathers. And I started kind of blogging, and I really, like, my actual initial thing in blogging is I started sending music recommendations to my friends. In general, I would make my friends mixtapes of what I was listening to back in the day. Like, yo, you need to hear this. Yo, you need to hear this. Yo, you need to hear this. That turned into like a monthly email. Yo, here's the records I bought. Here's what I'm going to buy. Here's what I'm excited about. And then it turned into blogging. And I used to run, I worked for and then ran a sort of competitor to Blabbermouth and Metal Injection called Metal Army America 10 years ago. I was one of their lead writers. I ended up running it for a while, and they were sunsetting it. And I ended up doing a few other things. I wrote for a blog that was the precursor to Wolverine Kills. If you guys know his page on Facebook and his website, he's the prognosticator of tours, probably the scourge of the whole ticket selling and touring industry, but he's actually a good dude. I did some news stuff for him, and then I kind of got courted to join Ghost Cult, which was a zine. I did not start. It started in the Netherlands in 2012, the year of doomsday. I'm hearing sirens. I'm right back in Brooklyn. This is amazing. I joined them as the basically senior editor for the US to cover metal festivals and interview bands in the US they couldn't get in Europe. And then the owner stepped down. He was having some issues and he wanted to kind of transition away from editorial and leave Ghost Cult. And he was like, do you want to own it? Because I'm leaving and it's either going to go away or you're going to take it. So I was like, well, you got a gun to my head. I'm going to say yes. So I took over Ghost Cult in the middle of year one. We published 19 issues of a digital magazine that was hugely popular for a time. Our original iteration of our website had 2 million views in the first year and a half. And then we transitioned. I had to move everything over to a new server, former partner bickering, stuff like that. Not with me, but just themselves. So I had to create a new Ghost Cult website, port everything over to a new place. That Ghost Cult has been in existence ever since. So 9 years this year in October. We're celebrating with a special on Give Me Metal Radio. And we'll see 10 years is right around the corner. So it's kind of hard to believe. I love music. I love uplifting baby bands into bigger bands. And, you know, as everybody knows, I'm fond of saying, to compete and have traction against your blabbermouths, Metal Sucks, Metal Injection, Metal Insider, Metal Underground, Metal Decibel, everybody. I prefer to cover underground bands. My favorite genres are thrash, doom, and death metal, and stoner rock, and prog. But also, you have to kind of support the butt rock to be able to get traction, to get clicks. So I have to write about Five Finger Death Punch for people to pay attention to my writing about Woad and, you know, Zombie with an I and bands like that.
So, Keefy, just to clarify just one thing about Ghost Cult. It's not a metal site.
That's not untrue. We are known best. I like to say this. Our like slogan is rock, metal, hardcore, punk, and indie. That was one of our like taglines. And like realistically, I have covered a lot of things that are out of the box. I've interviewed Bob Wayne, the outlaw country guy who loves metal. Yep. We've covered some indie singer-songwriter types. We've covered some light pop stuff, what I call college rap. MC Chris, MC Lars, Kosher Dills. Kosher Dills would be a guy who would be a great guest on this podcast, by the way. He's a completely DIY hip hop artist who's incredible. So my interest in music, I listen to a lot of jazz. I studied musicology as a minor in college. I love class. I sang opera and chamber music in high school. I love jazz. I love classical. I grew up on all these things. You know, I'm not limited to what Ghost Cult can do, but we're best known for rock and metal. We have a majority of writers who cover rock and metal, who are experts at rock and metal. And a lot of our staff still is former magazine writers, not just myself, having been in zines and blogs, but former art writers for Metal Hammer and Iron Fist and Terrorizer, rest in peace, and even Metal Maniacs for a time. And then people have gone on from Ghost Cult to go to Loudwire and Metal Injection and BBC Radio 1, you know what I'm saying? So like in podcasts. So we have been a springboard for other people. That is my dream. I love to get people, you know, anybody who comes to work with us, I want them to be able to go on to something greater if that's their destiny. And as an editor, I want to coach and help people get there.
Fair. So now just to bring it back to Ghost Cult. So you weren't there at the beginning, but you kind of took it over. So it was kind of like the reasoning behind running it.
Yeah, I inherited it. I don't know. I had put in like almost a year of work. My other thing, Metal Army, was gone. There was a period of time when I thought I could do both, and I really couldn't. And Metal Army was kind of going away anyway. And I don't know. I put a lot of time in. I took the temporary. I came in as the senior editor in 1 month. In month 2, I took over the magazine for a spell, just in place of this guy. He was like, can you just take over the magazine while I deal with some stuff? And I was like, sure, no problem. And then that turned into, I'm leaving. Do you want to have it? Nobody else is really going to take it. And I was like, well, I can either not throw away, but lose another bunch.
Is he still here?
So Metal Army. So I photographed Tool, I interviewed Cannibal Corpse, I interviewed all these big bands, Megadeth, and that stuff was all gone off the web. And now I have stuff saved, but like, you know, it's gone. You can use, there's like a waybackmachine.org that sometimes has screen grabs of all websites, but that stuff's gone. And I was like, well, do I want to get burned again and lose all my work and my credibility and things that I've done for the future if I want to go do something else? You know, like if I had a dream job and I hadn't taken Ghost Cult, it would be writing for Decibel or something like that, because that's where my heart is spiritually. I have been a Decibel reader and subscriber for many years. And that, or, like Revolver, the way it used to be, maybe a little bit now, but not as much. But yeah, something like that.
Cool. Okay, so now that we've kind of covered some of the ghost cult stuff, so why don't we talk about pitching for a little bit here, which is Corey's favorite topic, as usual. So, Corey, you want to take that over?
Oh yeah, so it is, because I mean, I'm sure you probably see some truly just fun pitches in your inbox. So what do you think is the most common mistake that bands or PRs, either one, are making when they pitch you?
I'm going to sidebar for 1 second and say I'm pounding this cup of coffee because I went to my first show last night in 511 days. And it was a little scary, but it was amazing. I recently moved to San Francisco, and there's a big metal scene here. And I saw Ex Mortis, who were a lot of fun. They did a Boston cover. And I hid in a corner. I wore my mask the whole time. Not a lot of people masking up, despite the fact that San Francisco is like one of the maskingest places, and the most vaccinated place basically in America almost, is Northern California. But anyway, if you see me, I'm a little bass. And hello, can you go? And I have my coffee, so forgive me. Pitching. Common mistakes in pitching. So, there's very easy instructions on almost every website how to pitch a website, your material. I can't get to everything. We used to have a very thriving underground column. The reality is most reviewers are unpaid. We are a volunteer operation. We make a little bit of money. I finally have made some business. I'm a part of the Blast Beat Network. I have some affiliate deals. I was a pretty successful affiliate of Liquid Death Threat. I still am, but they're not doing sort of as lucrative a deal anymore. And but it's hard to make money in this business. It is a labor of love. Most writers are unpaid, and they want to write about what they want to write about. So they will tell you, most of them don't want to write about unknown bands, which is a shame because there's a lot of great unknown bands. I feel like there are a lot of better unknown bands than these popular mainstream bands that you hear on Liquid Metal and things like that. Mistakes in pitching, they're common, they're aggravating. First and foremost, if there's a website you target to pitch, go actually look at their website, make sure that your music is something they would cover. I get a lot of stuff. I'm on lists. I must be on lists. I get lists, I get stuff for very like pop, trap, rap stuff, some of which I like, but it's just not necessarily appropriate for Ghost Cult unless it's like Ghost Main. Then there's a grandson. There's like a crossover of rock. Posty. I will cover Post Malone. I would love to interview Post Malone. I think we would like have a hilarious good time, but we're probably not big enough to talk to him yet. And then first of all, look at your websites. Second of all, see that they have instructions about how to contact them with music. Don't just hit my inbox with like a sup, nothing else, a sup and a link and your link tree or your whatever. That even never happens. This week, here's the fun. Every week I have like a handful of these, like what in the fuck. This week's what in the fuck was just my Instagram. Thanks for checking us out. Just here's my profile. Thanks for checking us out. Nothing. No intro. Love your site. Checked out your stuff. Thanks. No follow. Didn't follow me. Just message me. Thanks for checking us out. Like, okay, cool. What's my motivation? That's just about the same, like a step up from the spammers who hit my comment sections on my posts. Share this on blank to get blank. And I write them back because it's usually not a real person. So I want to fuck with them. Why? Why would I? I'm a marketing expert. Like, I haven't talked a lot about that. Curtis and I have done a lot of marketing stuff together, seminars, challenges, all these things. So I know how to market my brand pretty well. I'm not saying I know everything. I know enough to know that I don't know everything, but that shit's annoying. Bands that don't follow directions are annoying. Please don't send me actual like files attached to an email. At the very least, if you don't have a Bandcamp, which you should, if you don't, and you don't have your music somewhere I can listen to it, I understand that these things are challenging to learn. Please at least send me a Dropbox link or a Google Drive link at the worst, because this shit's annoying. I have enough stuff on my computer. I don't need to download everybody's music I don't need first of all, like my email is going to reject a lot of attachments anyway. Think you're a spammer. You're going to go to my spam box, which I don't check often. So there's just a lot of mistakes. And then just basically the who, what, where, when, why. Tell me who you are. Tell me what you do. When is your release coming out? Please get at me ahead of your release, not a month after your release, not the day after your release, not the week after your release, not a year after your release, not 2 years. I don't have the bandwidth. I don't have the time. I'm happy to share, believe it or not, I actually am faster to share the news of an underground unknown band, a cool video, a cool single, a cool show or festival or charity thing. I'm much faster and easier, honestly, for me to do than to get to a review of a band I have never heard before. That doesn't mean that I don't cover unknown, unsigned bands. I do. Just our bandwidth is limited. Like I said, we used to have a column in the magazine. We used to have a writer on staff that's all they wanted to do. Send me all the stuff you get. I'll pick it out every month and write a little recap. And that person's not here anymore. And I don't have another person that wants to, because writers are unpaid and they want to cover. If they like doom and black metal, they want to write about doom and black metal bands that are known. So their friends and their, whoever followers can appreciate the stuff they write and they can get more. It's just the way it is.
So now that just a statement I want to make is that if you hit someone up like a magazine or a blog rather, or website, so can you kind of cover why it is that you're more prone to quote post the news rather than the review? I know you briefly touched on it, but just a little bit more.
Yeah, no problem. Just so yeah, it's just easier for me to write a news story in a few minutes than it is to sit down. First of all, a lot of people are not good for, let's just talk about our brethren for a second. There are not a lot of good reviewers in the world. There are very few trusted, really good people interested in music critique. If you can find a website that's particularly good at reviews and get reviewed by them, that's awesome. A lot of people don't understand what reviewing is. I'm not trying to sound haughty or greater than I am, but I did go to journalism school back in the day. I spent a lot of time reading the best music journalism and critiques, and I have my personal heroes. If you've ever seen the movie Almost Famous, even though he hated metal, I love Lester Bangs. He was a huge proponent of rock and proto-punk and things that became punk rock. So he just didn't like Black Sabbath. He thought all the big bands were like phonies, which I understand. He loved Alice Cooper and Iggy Pop and things like that. So I love Almost Famous. Curtis, it's just like news is just faster. Realistically, news gets the most clicks on my site. We learned that a long time ago. We actually pivoted. There was a period of time where Ghost Cult posted very little news, big announcements, big records, deaths, things like that, and new bands forming and stuff like that. Just very the top level. And all our stuff was original content, and we had so much of it interview. We had so much of it. We had a digital magazine and a website that were actually virtually different from each other, different experiences, where the magazine was completely different. Features, we had people who could write features. People don't know how to write a feature anymore, or how to do an interview that can be written into a feature. These are skills that are lost to antiquity. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back that I'm more talented or better than anybody else. I'm just old. I'm old as fuck. I've been around a long time. I've been writing since I'm 18, and I'm coming up on the golden age here. So honestly, I just have seen a lot of done a lot, seen a lot. And I just carry that as a little wisdom badge. Again, I'm not trying to lord that over anybody. News is just faster. I had a really cool PR pitch me from Brazil and South America about a cool band. I had a couple of minutes to spare. I checked them out. I liked their story. I liked the video. They've been around for 15 years and they're still out there slogging away. And they put out a unique and different song that is different than anything they had ever done, and a cool video. And they had some props from Max Cavalera, because they're Brazilian and he actually likes the band. So I was like, that's a compelling story to write. And I figured all that out within the 5 minutes it took me to watch their video. And then I posted a story, and that person, as a PR, is very appreciative and jumped onto all her social media, which most publicists and record labels are terrible at social media. Terrible at it. Mm-hmm. Curtis is one of the better ones, and most people are not good at this. And, I'm thankful that the band shared it, she shared it. That's all I would ask for. Really, that's the bare minimum. An underground band, you can't afford not to share your clips. You can't afford not to share any mention of your band. The bare minimum thing you should be is thankful, humble, and share it.
Totally. Corey, do you have anything you want to add on pitching?
No, that was pretty thorough.
Cool.
Yeah.
So next, let's talk about interviewing, Keefy. You one of the things you do is you do a lot of interviews. So can you kind of go over a few tips on interviews?
Sure thing. I have not to brag, but I have a backlog of like 30 interviews that are not published to YouTube yet. And I've been struggling to restart my podcast because I moved platforms and I'm struggling to kind of convert my backlog of podcasts. So anybody out there listening, if I podcasted with you and it's not a video, I apologize. It's just been a struggle. I moved to a new city. I started a brand new job and I moved to a new apartment all this month in July 2021. Holy shit. But I do a lot of interviews. I'm probably going to dial it back a little bit from the clip I have been doing. Like 5 to 7 a week is too much. I have a very demanding job. I'm on East Coast hours for work now on the West Coast. So I'm up at 5 something. I'm on the clock at 6, and it is go and very intense work. I work for one of the biggest marketing agencies and ad agencies in the whole world. And I'm part of one division of a giant conglomerate. I was very reluctant to go back into the corporate world. But again, I wish Ghost Cult could pay the bills and I could be like Wayne's World. I got $5,000, but it's not. So interviews, yada, yada, yada. I'm really passionate about artists and their story. So I have always been fascinated. I read every interview with every band that I loved. Some of them are not good. Some of them are great. Again, back to the journalism school thing. It's one of the basic, how to write a news story, how to do an interview. Those are the first 2 things you learn. Those are the 2 basic skills: reporting, writing, telling people, getting people to kind of transmit their story. And what I'm really interested in, especially, is artists with some kind of journey, some kind of, how do you get to the heart of that? And some people can't talk about it. I interviewed Amin-Ra recently, Colin, who's one of the most brilliant minds in the world, and he's a genius artist person. And I was like, okay, I can't just approach this guy with the who, what, where, when, why basic questions, because one, he's not going to want to divulge all his feelings about his process. So how do I approach him in a different and new way than some of my other interviews? Like a baby band that's just starting out, it's very easy. How did you form? What are your goals? What would you like to do? Who have you jammed with? What are your influences? A brand new band, that's their main story because they don't have an arc to talk about. A veteran artist like Amin-Ra, who has been around for 15 years and is one of the best live bands perhaps ever, is a band I want to get deep into, like the lore of his, whatever he's willing to share. That's the other thing. Some artists, Dee Snider will tell you every single thing he's feeling and thinking in his process, how everything happened with a timeline. Some people can't or don't want to because they don't want, if they tell you how the sausage is made, it's kind of a, giving away a little too much of themselves. So kind of figuring out who you're talking to. Mm-hmm. And I listen to a lot of music before I prep a lot for an interview. I read all the PR, but I don't guide myself strictly by what the PR says because I do my own research. If I happen to be a fan, I keep that in consideration, but I also don't let that override. A couple of times I have fanboyed out. I've been fortunate to interview Devin Townsend several times, once in person, once most recently, via Zoom, and a couple of times on the phone. I definitely fanboyed out the first time I talked to Devin Townsend, interviewing Mike Muir of Suicidal Tendencies, who's a hero of mine, and a few other people. So I try to dial that in, my internal lover of music, and try to dial it back and just be a serious person, because I am trying to have people tell their story. And I have been criticized that I inject my life story in, like my fandom, into my interviews a little too much. And that's fair, but I also can't help the fact that I'm also old and I've lived a long time, and some of this stuff is very meaningful to me. So, or if somebody says something that's relatable, I want them to know that I relate to in the moment, and I think it makes for a better conversation. But the jury's out. You guys can watch some of my interviews on Ghost Cult Mag on YouTube and tell me if I'm injecting a little too much personal sidebarring into my chats. But the criticisms in the comments, I post almost all the negative comments. It's awesome.
So who do you think was the best person that you interviewed, or who do you think gave the best interview, I guess is probably the best way of phrasing it?
There's been a few. Michael Alago, who I have another one coming up with soon, we'll post in the next few weeks, but I interviewed him right when his documentary came out, Who the Fuck Is That Guy? The Fabulous Journey of Michael Alago. And we went to his house, which is like a freaking music and pop culture museum in a little way. He let us into his home. We set up our gear. We had met in person in the city when I lived in New York. He would show up everywhere I was. We introduced ourselves. We made friends. And then I was like, would you do an interview for the movie for Ghost Cult? And he would. And we didn't really have a place to bring him because I did all my video out of my apartment, which was tiny. And we thought about maybe getting a venue. I've done a couple of cool interviews. Most of my interviews were in the before times of the Rona were in basements of clubs, basement of St. Vitus, Lucky 13. Sometimes you interview an artist on stage before a thing, but a lot of our stuff was in person. Before that, it was all over the phone. There wasn't Zoom, there wasn't Skype, that much video stuff. And we leaned very heavily since then into Skype and Zoom and stuff like that. So now, we have a lot of stuff, a lot of collateral, but Alago was incredible. In his home, he pulled out like shoe boxes of photos from like 1984 of him and Metallica meeting at Roseland when he signed them. Crazy shit. I really loved Anneka van Giersbergen, formerly of The Gathering, and her many bands. She was really great. At the height of Trumpism, I interviewed Phil Rind of Sacred Reich, who's another person I looked up to as a vocalist and a bass player back in the day, as a person I used to jam along to Surf Nicaragua and try to play those riffs. And he was really brilliantly smart about just American life and culture and politics, and the fact that he had a badass album to come back to and talk to again. I interviewed, here's a good thing that's kind of a feather in my cap. One of my first big interviews was Anthrax, who's one of my favorite bands ever. I'm from the Bronx, New York, where two of their members are from. And I interviewed Frankie Bello at Yankee Stadium the day they got the key to the city for the Big Four concert, which is coming up on its 10-year anniversary. So I'm probably gonna try to resurface that somewhere on Ghost Cult and repurpose that thing. And yeah, that was a big one for me just as a fan. And then he was super cool. And I was the only journalist there from the music world, the only one. And I lived in Boston. So I took the bus down from Boston. I got to go into the new Yankee Stadium before I had ever seen a game there. I'm also from the Bronx and a huge baseball fan and a Yankees fan. And, that was pretty magical to sit in like the Yankee Steakhouse, see the band get in, the key to the city from the borough president of the Bronx, read a decree and a declaration, actually written by my homeboy, James Rouse, who works with the borough president's office, and he helped make that happen. Hung out with the band, talked to Joey, talked to Rob Caggiano, who's not in the band anymore. He's in Volbeat now. So that was a great one. There's a couple more. I'm sure I'm leaving out a few. Cannibal Corpse was awesome. Trevor from Black Dahlia Murder is always awesome. Alex Skolnick from Testament is always awesome. I also loved, there's so many. A cool band that I really dig, that's really cool, that's kind of a little underground, is called Rebelmatic from Brooklyn. And I did like the whole band in a round robin, and it was a lot of fun. We talked about music and politics and gentrification and cool things like that. So there's been quite a few really stellar ones in the last few years.
Cool. I think we're getting close to running out of time. Corey, do you have any questions that you want to ask Keefy before we wrap up?
No, I think that's been pretty thorough. Okay, here's one. Sure. What advice would you give to somebody wanting to get started in music journalism to kind of break through? Because I know it's super, super difficult to kind of get anybody's attention. Mm-hmm. And so what advice would you give to somebody who wants to get started?
Easy peasy. First of all, write reviews. Write your own reviews, unprompted, unpaid. If you want to pick stuff you love, that's fine. But actually, the better thing is to pick genres and bands you don't know and review their music. Get started there. Writing is the thing. Just if you make music, make music. If you write. If you podcast. Do the thing. If you don't have experience and practice, you're not going to get good or great. Secondly, you have to eliminate your ego a little bit, not your musical experience, not your life experience, but you have to eliminate your ego. A lot of people are not good writers because it's more about what they hate and love and less about the qualities of the music they're listening to. So then you should not be writing about music. Critique is a thing. Go look up books on critique by people like Robert Christgau, Anthony DeCurtis, Go read the early writings of Chuck Klosterman and look at his stuff. If you like Anthony Fantano, that's cool. But like, look at the people who are considered the best reviewers and look at what they do and how they do it and what they care about and what they highlight. And then in terms of breaking in, which is, the heart of your question, Corey, pitch people, offer to be helpful. It's a volunteer enterprise. You might eventually get paid. Some people do. There was a period of time I put myself through grad school by writing for websites, and I made a lot of money doing it, and then it kind of went away, but it's cool. I love what I do. Offer your services, pitch a lot of music, website heads, pick blog head, pick website. Can I help you do something? Do you need help with news? Do you need help with research? Do you need help organizing data and information? Can I help with your social media if that's something you're good at? What can I do to help you? That's how you ingratiate yourself to somebody like me. Anybody looking to come write for Ghost Cult or work with Ghost Cult, I could use a lot of hands right now. We do still have a pretty big staff, but I'm always looking for some fresh voices, and I'm always looking for some people down to help. You can email me at editor@ghostcultmag.com and check out Ghost Cult Mag on the web and on YouTube and Instagram, and we're on all the things. So
cool. Well, I think that's all I got. And I guess that was the final question from you, Corey?
Yeah. Final
cool.
question? Yeah.
Cool. Keefy, do you have anything final that you would like to say before we end off?
I appreciate you guys. I think we still need people to comment on the industry, and we didn't bitch a lot, Corey. I'm sorry, maybe another time. But I have plenty of gripes and grouses at things. But we still need voices to uplift artists. We still need voices to comment on the industry. The industry is a landmine of many issues and problems, and it needs discussing. It needs talking about, and music marketing is still misunderstood and terribly misused. And we didn't, I know that's my wheelhouse, and we didn't talk a lot about that today, but bands need to apply themselves a lot hard. Even if you can't pay someone to do it for you, you can learn. University YouTube, learn how to do some shit and do it yourself if you're going to do it yourself, but really put a premium on communicating. Because if you don't communicate well, no one's going to care about your music or you.
I agree with that. And with that, party on, Corey.
Party on, guys.
Peace, y'all. Thanks.